Rondo Hatton. Rondo Hatton didn't fit the mold of a classic Hollywood star, but that's exactly what made him unforgettable. Once a sports writer in Florida during the early 1930s, Hatton's life took a dramatic turn when symptoms of acromegaly, a rare hormonal disorder triggered by a pituitary tumor, began to reshape his face and body. His jaw, brow, and hands grew noticeably larger, transforming not only his appearance but his entire career trajectory. Universal Studios saw potential in what others saw as difference, casting him in horror films where his condition wasn't hidden. It was the main attraction. Titles like House of Horrors and The Brute Man didn't just feature Hatton, they built characters around his distinct look. Some critics at the time questioned whether these roles were chilling entertainment or outright exploitation. Film historian Tom Weaver once called Hatton's performances quietly tragic, hinting at the emotional depth he brought to characters often written as soulless villains. Off-screen whispers of mistreatment followed him. Industry insiders suggest studios offered little more than a paycheck, leaving Hatton to navigate fame while enduring gawking crowds and sensational headlines. Despite this, he earned a loyal fan base in the horror community, not for his condition, but for the unsettling calm he brought to every role. His death on February 2, 1946, at age 51, was caused by a heart attack, likely linked to complications from his acromegaly. Today, his legacy lives on through the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards, a nod to a man whose real-life appearance became a symbol of both Hollywood's fascination with the grotesque and its uneasy relationship with physical difference. Michael Dunn. In a business obsessed with height, symmetry, and screen-perfect silhouettes, Michael Dunn shattered expectations, standing just 3 feet 10 inches tall due to a rare skeletal disorder that affected his spine and growth plates. Born on October 20th, 1934 in Shattuck, Oklahoma, Dunn's physical condition might have limited others, but it became the backdrop against which his talent blazed. By the mid-1960s, he was no longer just a curiosity, he was a force. His performance as Glocken in Stanley Kramer's Ship of Fools earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, a rare feat for any actor, let alone one with a visible disability. It wasn't just a win for representation, it was a crack in Hollywood's polished facade. Still, the industry didn't change overnight. Dunn was frequently boxed into roles that leaned on outdated stereotypes, eccentric villains, comic relief, or tragic figures. But then came Dr. Miguelito Loveless on CBS's The Wild Wild West. From 1965 to 1968, Dunn played the brilliant, menacing antagonist to Robert Conrad's James West. Loveless wasn't just a villain, he was a genius with a flair for theatrics and a taste for revenge. TV historian David Bianculli has described the character as one of the smartest villains ever seen on network television. That portrayal turned Dunn into a cult icon, and proved that intellect, not just image, could steal a scene. Behind the camera, Dunn didn't stay quiet. He was vocal about the way actors with disabilities were treated, often challenging the industry's narrow view. Dunn is reported to have said, "I am a human being first, an actor second, and a dwarf third," a direct rebuke to the hierarchy Hollywood often imposed. But the cost of constant travel, demanding roles, and a body under strain caught up with him. On August 30th, 1973, Dunn died in London at just 38 years old. The official cause was respiratory failure, though complications from his condition were likely involved. Entertainment historians speculate that the relentless pace of his career may have worsened his health, a tragic irony for someone trying to prove he could keep up with the best. Marty Feldman. In a business obsessed with symmetry and surface, Marty Feldman was a walking paradox and a breakout phenomenon. His bulging, misaligned eyes weren't part of a character act or makeup trick. They were the result of Graves' disease, an autoimmune disorder that affects the thyroid and can cause exophthalmos, or protruding eyes. Reports suggest Feldman developed the condition in his late teens or early adulthood, which left him with a look that confounded casting agents and often kept him sidelined. But instead of chasing conformity, Feldman leaned into the very feature that set him apart. By the time he played Igor in Mel Brooks' 1974 comedy Young Frankenstein, Feldman had turned what many saw as a limitation into a signature strength. With a shifting hump, exaggerated posture, and those unforgettable eyes, he didn't just play the role, he stole every scene. Critics praised his timing, but it was his appearance that made him unforgettable. Fans later coined the phrase, He made weird beautiful, a nod to his ability to turn a medical condition into comic genius. Behind the scenes, Feldman was known for pushing back against Hollywood's obsession with physical perfection. Though rarely quoted directly on the topic, he often chose roles that mock conventional beauty standards. Entertainment historians even speculate that his success helped shift casting norms, opening the door for actors with visible differences to be seen as more than punchlines or background characters. Feldman's life ended abruptly on December 2, 1982, while filming in Mexico City. Official reports cite a heart attack, but questions have lingered for decades. Some point to years of heavy smoking, others to the intense stress of his work schedule. Whatever the cause, his death at age 48 cut short a career that had already defied the odds. His legacy? A reminder that in an industry built on polish, it's often the imperfections that leave the deepest mark. Peter Falk. Peter Falk's signature squint wasn't just a character choice. It was the result of losing his right eye to retinoblastoma, a rare eye cancer, at age 3. The surgical removal left him with a glass eye, which became an unlikely asset in an industry built on polished appearances. Early in his career, casting agents hesitated, unsure if audiences would accept an actor with such a visible difference. But Peter didn't hide it. He used it. When he first stepped into the role of Lieutenant Columbo in the 1968 TV movie Prescription Murder, his asymmetry became part of the detective's charm. Columbo's tilted head, wandering gaze, and slow burn interrogations weren't just acting flourishes. They were shaped in part by Falk's physical limitations. Industry observers speculate that his need to manage depth perception influenced the character's deliberate pacing and spatial control. Falk himself often joked about his glass eye, once tossing out the line, "I've got one eye, but I can see through you," a quip that captured his dry wit, though its origins remain murky. Behind the scenes, directors adjusted camera blocking to accommodate his field of vision, but few noticed. Falk's timing and presence dominated the screen. Despite industry skepticism, his portrayal redefined what a leading man could look like. Over the years, talk has circulated about a Columbo reboot, with fans and studios alike wondering who could possibly fill Falk's shoes. So far, nothing concrete has emerged, but the legacy remains. One glass eye, countless unforgettable moments. Howard McNear. In 1963, actor Howard McNear, famous for playing Floyd the Barber on The Andy Griffith Show, suffered a stroke that left the left side of his body significantly impaired, with only limited movement. Most productions at the time would have quietly phased out an actor facing such challenges, but McNear was brought back. Rather than recasting or writing off the character, producers adjusted scripts and staging. Scenes were tailored so he could sit or lean, often positioned behind props like counters or desks. His speech was slower, and his gestures more restrained, but his comedic timing remained sharp. While the show didn't spotlight his condition, it didn't erase it either. Some camera angles subtly minimized his limitations, but his presence on screen was still unmistakably altered. Industry insiders have long claimed that Andy Griffith himself insisted on keeping McNear involved, reportedly even rearranging filming schedules to accommodate him. Whether out of loyalty or creative respect, the cast and crew rallied behind him. In an era when visible disabilities were rarely seen on television, McNear's continued role was unusual and quietly influential. Though his health declined further by 1967, prompting his retirement, his brief return left a lasting mark on how disability could be navigated in mainstream entertainment. Annette Funicello. In 1987, Annette Funicello, one of Disney's original Mouseketeers and a staple of 60s beach films, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a degenerative neurological condition that slowly strips away muscle control. For 5 years, she kept the diagnosis private, reportedly fearing that public knowledge would derail her career. Hollywood's narrow standards for physical perfection made such concerns understandable. When she finally went public in 1992, she told People magazine, "I didn't go public because I didn't want pity." Her revelation marked a dramatic shift, not just in her own public image, but in how illness was discussed in the entertainment world. She began appearing in a wheelchair, not as a figure of tragedy, but as a symbol of persistence. Her openness sparked a wave of support, boosted donations to MS research, and inspired others in the industry to speak openly about their own health battles. Through the Annette Funicello Research Fund for Neurological Diseases, she became a powerful advocate, pushing the conversation around chronic illness into the spotlight. Her initial silence reflected a deeper, ongoing fear in Hollywood that any visible disability, no matter how managed, could still be seen as a professional risk in an image-driven industry. Her passing in April of 2013 closed a chapter, but her impact on disability visibility in entertainment still resonates. James Arness. Few fans knew that James Arness, the towering 6'7" star of CBS's Gunsmoke, carried a hidden war wound for most of his career. In early 1944, while serving with the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division during the brutal Anzio campaign in Italy, Arness took a German machine gun round to the right leg. The injury was so severe that amputation was considered. He spent over a year in military hospitals, and the damage left him with a permanent limp and chronic pain that followed him into Hollywood. When Gunsmoke premiered in 1955, producers masked the limp with low camera angles, careful blocking, and selective editing. Arness himself downplayed the issue, once saying, "I felt the character had to stand on his own." Some biographers speculate that his famously stoic screen presence was shaped as much by that injury as by his training. Behind the scenes, each long day of filming reportedly took a physical toll, but Arness rarely complained. His quiet endurance became something of a legend, especially among veterans. While no official citation exists, the Department of Veterans Affairs has referenced Arness in discussions of post-war resilience. According to his brother, actor Peter Graves, James's wartime experience gave him a kind of unshakable grit that couldn't be taught. Industry insiders whisper that his pain gave Marshall Dillon a weight that no script could write. John Carradine. By the late 1960s, John Carradine's gaunt frame and booming baritone had already cemented him as a staple in horror and drama, but behind the camera, his body was betraying him. Severe arthritis, which worsened in his later years, twisted his hands and stiffened his movement, turning everyday tasks into painful obstacles. While the condition wasn't always visible early on, by the time he was appearing in low-budget thrillers and Shakespearean revivals, the signs were hard to miss. Some filmmakers reportedly leaned into his altered posture and rigid gait to amplify his eerie screen presence, though whether that was intentional casting or coincidence remains debated. Carradine, famously work-obsessed, was known to push through intense discomfort, often needing help between takes. According to family interviews, he rarely complained, believing, as he often said, that an actor must act no matter the cost. Industry sources even suggest he turned down offers to slow down or retire, insisting that performance was his only true relief. With over 350 film credits, his output was staggering, even as his body faltered. His sons, David, Keith, and Robert, have all pointed to their father's unwavering dedication as the blueprint for their own careers. For decades, the full extent of Carradine's physical struggle remained out of the spotlight, overshadowed by his prolific resume and the mystique of his on-screen persona. Only later did biographies peel back the curtain, revealing a man who didn't just act through adversity, he built a legacy on top of it. Ricardo Montalban. Ricardo Montalban, often remembered for his commanding presence as Khan in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and as the enigmatic Mr. Rourke on Fantasy Island, spent most of his career concealing a serious spinal injury. In 1951, during the filming of Across the Wide Missouri, a horse fell on him, crushing his lower back and causing permanent damage. The result was chronic pain and partial paralysis, conditions he quietly endured for over 5 decades. Despite the severity of his injury, Montalban rarely spoke about it publicly. He underwent numerous surgeries and managed his pain privately, often hiding his limitations even from directors. Industry insiders suggest that some of his scenes were subtly choreographed to limit movement, though he insisted on performing many physically demanding roles himself. In Star Trek II, his intense performance sparked speculation that a body double was used for certain shots, but Montalban confirmed in interviews that every scene was his despite the pain. Off-screen, his experience fueled a commitment to advocacy. In the late 1990s, he established the Ricardo Montalban Foundation to support disabled and underrepresented performers. By 2004, the historic Doolittle Theater in Los Angeles was renamed the Montalban Theater in his honor, transforming into a hub for inclusive arts programming. His efforts helped spotlight a long-ignored conversation in Hollywood, the lack of visibility and opportunity for actors with disabilities. He passed away in January 2009 at age 88. While his legacy includes iconic roles, it also reflects a deeper story, one of perseverance, quiet resilience, and a refusal to let physical adversity define his craft. Dick York. A single mistake on set changed the course of Dick York's career, and some say sitcom history. In 1959, while filming the Western drama They Came to Cordura, York suffered a devastating spinal injury. The scene called for him to help lift a railroad handcar, but something went wrong. He tore muscles and damaged vertebrae along his back, triggering a chronic pain condition that would follow him for the rest of his life. York's injury didn't just end a day's work. It launched a painful, years-long struggle that quietly unfolded behind the scenes of one of television's most iconic shows. When he was cast as Darren Stevens in ABC's Bewitched in 1964, the pain was already constant. For 5 seasons, York filmed while battling intense physical limitations. Most scenes were shot with him seated or leaning against furniture. Industry insiders speculate that entire episode scripts were rewritten to accommodate his condition. York later admitted to relying heavily on prescription medication just to function on set. In interviews, he described being propped up to deliver lines, unable to stand upright for long stretches. The pressure eventually reached a breaking point. In 1969, he collapsed during filming and was hospitalized. While he reportedly hoped to return, his health never fully recovered. Producers replaced him with Dick Sargent, igniting one of the most talked-about casting changes in sitcom history, and sparking fan theories that still circulate today. At the time, the public was told little more than that York had health issues. But years later, he opened up about the full scope of his condition: chronic pain, physical disability, and the stigma of substance dependency. In his later years, York became an outspoken advocate for compassion and support, launching a nonprofit called Acting for Life to help those in need, including individuals experiencing homelessness. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.